I was actually going to bring this up later, but you kind of just touched on it. How has the coverage changed? Because I think for guys like me and you, we're labeled by a lot of people as spot up shooters, but there's a craft in creating shots, because when you get to a certain level of prestige as a shooter, you don't necessarily get those standstill, your defender's in the gap, the ball handler kicks to you, rhythm three, right? That doesn't necessarily happen a lot. So it's on you to get creative in order to produce shots that you can make. And I'm just curious to you, like the evolution that you've seen in how defenses cover you. And get nerdy here. I love, because people love when we break down the X's and O's. So just in terms of whether it's top blocking or when the pickup point is, or where somebody's guarding you when the ball's on the other side of the court, things like that.
Yeah. So I think the biggest adjustment, particularly in the playoffs in this year, that I've noticed is the physicality. I think that teams have noticed that maybe they've had success, or other teams have had success in just getting like really into my body, particularly when I like to come off those handoffs. The top blocking, I haven't seen actually as much of this year as I did in the playoffs and in the bubble. I think there's still ways to get creative, even with the top block. I mean, something you do a lot, when you come up the other way on that same screen, you kind of cut down and then come back, you're still coming to the ball. So that one is basically still as effective as getting open. So I think, there are guys, and I'm not going to name too specific because I don't want to, give away like who I think guards me the best or whatever, just because, then you have people looking at film and extrapolating, whatever. But I think when people get really physical and try to blow up handoffs, blow up screens, and just use strength, because for me, if I'm able to come off, I don't really view it as good defense, because I still think I'm able to get to my shot. And that's an advantage that I have because I'm tall and have a higher release point. But I think, I view it also in this way. And, throughout the flow of a game, you don't know how many like of those relief threes you're going to get, in that whether it be a offensive rebound and a kick out or like a defensive mistake, you can't rely on those. So if I have to get to my 10 attempts, I have to get to those in other ways, in being persistent. And that's a word that Spo uses with me all the time, is you have to be persistent. And if they shut down that first one, you're coming off the backside, you're coming up another way, and just still getting to the ball and still getting to your attempts.
I was going to bring this up because to me, you've gotten really good at this. It's the second action that's even harder to defend. So, for example, let's say you come off, you guys set that play where you set the back screen and then you come off a DHO.
Yeah.
And let's say it's guarded really well, and you take that escape dribble and the shot's really not there. But now the defender, right, he's going full speed to try to contest that shot. So what you've gotten good at, and this is what I was explaining to our assistant coach earlier today about that second action, what you've gotten good at, you take the DHO, you take the escape dribble, you got your guy in the move, you throw it back to Bam, then you come back for that second handoff on, I call it a throw and go, other teams call it chase action or whatever. But you come back on that second handoff. Todd Wright, who's now with the Clippers, but when I was in Philly, he used to always say, you may catch me the first time, you may catch me the second time, but there's no fucking way you're catching me the third time. and it's that persistence in hunting a shot, because there's a difference in being a spot up shooter and being a hunter.
Right. I think that, and that's why I talk about the most effective defense is to blow up the action altogether, which, mind you, is a really, really hard thing to do. But if I'm able to get to that first handoff, even if you take away the shot on the first one, that chase and that throw and go, you're more than likely going to be out of position to then reconnect and then get me off the second one. So it's like you said, it's almost like if you get to that first one and they take it away, it's like, great, I'll just keep running you ragged. And there's there's like clips of me, and I've seen you do it as well. There's clips of me from like last year and this year. I don't know if there's like a great sequence of it where Bam and it just looks ridiculous. Bam and I are just literally throwing the ball back and forth to each other on the top of the key. It reminds me of that clip of from like semi-pro.
Jackie
Obviously
Moon.
different scenario, but like the post-up where we're just like only throwing it to each other, just back and forth. And it's just like eventually a defense, like someone's going to make a mistake if you just put them in enough action.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Somebody's going to make a mistake. It's this back and forth in like a 10-foot radius.
Yeah.
And everybody else is just over there. You're just like, oh, no, I'm just trying to get a clip off. That's all I'm trying to do. Right. That's all I'm trying to do. Have you had a major shooting slump yet?
I had one in January of last year. It was like a 7 or 8 game stretch where I just couldn't make anything. And it's so frustrating because like everything feels the same except like just the result of the ball going in or not. And that's where I try to have like the mental fortitude to be like, don't get caught up in the result. Don't get caught up in the result. Like just maintain, like keep doing the same things and it'll come back. But I mean, I've definitely had slumps throughout my career, definitely in college, stretches where I felt like I couldn't make a shot, but that was probably the biggest one. Last January, I had a stretch where I just felt like I couldn't make anything.
Here's what's crazy about the NBA. Was it an Ice Cube song, I think, where he says no, maybe it was Jay-Z. It was all good just a week ago. It was all good a week ago. Like the NBA, you have so many games in such a short amount of time. Like you can have like a 3 or 4 game stretch, and I'm on a 6 game stretch right now. We're recording this a week before we release it, but I'm on a 6 game stretch right now. I'm literally 6 for 40 in 6 games. Like I've never had a stretch like this before. And then you reflect back and you're like, man, like 2 weeks ago, like I was feeling pretty good about my game. And sometimes in the NBA, it could be like 5 days ago, I felt like I was unstoppable. And then you have 3 game stretches where it can be really frustrating. It can be really frustrating. How did you get out of it? How did you get out of your slump?
I mean, it cuts both ways in that, like the compounding confidence of when you are feeling good, like you just start to feel like invincible, and then everything's going. And you're right, like it can just change, like on a whim, and then all of a sudden you just feel like you can't make anything. In terms of how I get out of it, I try my biggest, and this is what I tell people when people ask, like, how do you develop consistency, is like I try to treat my like craft of shooting as any sort of habit that I would have. And I try to do it every single day the same, so that, whether you have a great game, whether you have a poor game, you're still doing the same things. So at some point it's just going to even out and it's just going to find its level. But like the moment I feel, and I used to do this, like I used to shoot after bad games, I used to do that sort of thing. But like now I feel that the moment you try to like overcompensate is then you're like throwing everything off. It's like, it's almost like, okay, now you need to get extra shots because you missed, you went 1 of 8 or 9. It's like the work you put in beforehand, the habits you were building on a day-to-day basis weren't good enough. So now you need to supplement your work with additional reps. It's like, for me, like consistency is everything in shooting, and that you want everything to be the same every single time, or at least try to, whether that be form or whatever. So that should be the same for your routine. I don't know if you feel the same way, but like it just do the same thing every time.
Right. I've never been an extra shot guy, even when I'm in a slump, because I'm like, I already shoot extra shots. I already do all these extra things to work on it. Yeah. And the flip side of that too is, ideally, right, we're the pendulum is like this for shooting, right? A good night is 6 for 10. A bad night is 3 for 10 or 4 for 10, right? You can't expect too many 1 for 10 nights, although I've had a few lately, and you can't expect too many 9 for 10 nights, right?
Yeah.
So the flip side of the argument, you should be getting extra shots up when you're in a slump. Like if you're going 9 for 10, would you go get extra shots up?
Exactly.
No, you trust exactly what you've already been doing for however many weeks or however many months, or, for professionals, however many years. We've been doing this a long time.